Let's talk about the top 10 things you can start doing today so you can really build that plan of overcoming your long-term insomnia and sleep problems. All these 10 different things I use in my coaching practice on a daily basis, helping clients to really overcome their long-term insomnia, no matter what kind of combination of problems they might have. So some of my clients struggle with not being able to fall asleep. Other clients might wake up several times a night. Other clients might actually have some pre-existing conditions that seem to have this bidirectional link with their lack of sleep and so on. So there's lots of different client examples that I've used to put these 10 things together. I've been working with clients for 10 years, so there's a lot of different experience with different versions of things over the years, and actually helping clients successfully. But a word of warning: as you might have already seen if you're part of my community, but if you're brand new, then this will be that word of warning. There is no one thing that magically is going to sort out a longer term sleep problem. I know that there are a lot of headlines about it. I know that there are a lot of promises you might see in different articles of if you just do that one thing, then magically your sleep problems are going to go away. But that's not how sleep problems work. So that's this word of warning of being patient with that process. A lot of the clients I work with in my practice actually have spent years and years trying those things that never really worked for them, mostly because they were too general. So in today's video, I'm going to talk to you about these practical things that will really make a difference, but only if you actually put them in place. Now, before we do that, I always welcome you back if you're part of my community. If you're brand new, then this is the opportunity to hit that subscribe button below if you haven't yet. Hit that bell as well so I can let you know when I post new videos, and the like button at the end if you have actually enjoyed the content of the video. And let me also quickly introduce myself. The reason I wanted to share this video today is I see more and more of, unfortunately, what's happening in the world in terms of sleep. I am a sleep coach, a professional speaker, and the creator of Sleep Skills for Life program. So I work with people every single day in this big world of sleep. I work with clients who have complex sleep problems, insomnia problems. I work with clients who have not found anything that has actually helped them. So it's really important that when you look at these things, you really look at how your sleep problems show up for you, and then what bits are better to integrate first. So all these 10 things I'm going to share with you, I would suggest you put them in place over a period of time. There's no point changing too many things all at once and then not knowing which one is actually more applicable to your situation. So the very first thing is that every single person's sleep problems and insomnia problems are different. I know that there are a lot of articles out there, resources out there that seems to suggest that you just need these magical quick things or secrets, hacks, and so on. But the reality is that every one of us is built in a different way. It doesn't have to mean that this becomes complicated, but it has to mean that it has to be based on your own foundations. Just because you throw a lot of different tips and advice at the sleep problem, it doesn't mean that they are applicable to you. So this is that very first thing that I always say to every single client, that you got to look at your sleep situation. So the first sleep advice I have for you, and this is, as I mentioned, it's sleep coaching advice. You got to do the work in order to start actually working with this approach, is to write down what are the parts of sleep that you want to improve upon and how you would want to improve them. So for example, these can be that you want to fall asleep within 20 minutes, let's say. This can be that maybe you want to sleep through the night and only have one nighttime waking, but even if you wake up once, you fall asleep again in 20 minutes. Maybe another one would be that if you're experiencing sort of sleep-related anxiousness, that you want to learn how to actually decrease the emotions that rise up in the middle of the night. Another thing that can be that you would want to wake up in a more natural way in the morning rather than maybe your alarm scaring you out of sleep. So these are just some examples, but please don't start with, I just want to improve my sleep. Because when you only look at it in a very big picture way, it's not actually going to give you the practicalities of where you even want to begin. And this is something I see in my practice all the time. If it's too big, even your mind cannot start noticing what is actually helping. But if you start the question, for example, on, well, what stops me being able to fall asleep in, let's say, 20 minutes, your mind actually can work with you to start surfacing what might be the preventing factors and what might be the actual positive factors that influence a better night. And every one of you have better nights, even if you have very sort of chronic and long-term and quite complex sleep problems, and maybe you're not having a lot of sleep. That having sleep means that you can have sleep, and we really need to help you figure out what prevents you and what helps you, and then really go from there. The second sleep coaching advice I have is, please do not self-diagnose. Self-diagnosis is actually incredibly dangerous in a way of actually helping you to overcome your sleep problems and insomnia that have been around for a long period of time. Time and time again in my practice, I see this. I see this every single day. When, of course, through general education on sleep or researching on sleep, you would have found something that feels quite appropriate to your situation. And you will pick up that diagnosis or label, and you then start building beliefs around it. That must be the reason. Maybe I am broken in some way, or maybe this thing that's going on in my mind or in my body, whatever label or whatever diagnosis you might have picked up, is the reason why I can't possibly improve my sleep, or is the reason why some of my nights are really negative. The problem with self-diagnosis is you only know what you know. Someone like me who has worked with so many clients over the years, I know a lot more about how something shows up and what might be the root cause of that problem than you just knowing yourself. I mean, this is very common in any field, to know that we might not see ourselves from that third party perspective. So if you have been trying a lot of different things, if you have been doing or using different habits, suggestions, secrets, hacks, tips, you put them in place, you worked with them for a while, but nothing seems to have made a consistent influence, then my advice is really to seek an assessment. Don't hold yourself back from actually really being able to improve something simply because maybe that diagnosis you picked up, or that label, or that whatever conclusions you have come to, are not actually appropriate to where you're at. The third sleep coaching advice I have for you is to remember that every single day your sleep changes. Every single day your life is a bit different. Every single day your physical, emotional, and mental processes and the ways you respond to certain things are different. But it does not have to lead to overanalyzing or confusion. It's really just about figuring out what are some of those things that are showing up on a consistent basis. Now, when you look at sleep this way, sleep, insomnia, sleep problems, whichever way you want to look at it, when you look at every single day is different, you can actually start extracting positives out of even potentially a negative experience. A lot of the things I hear from clients is their frustrations about the worst case scenarios. But what's important to remember is the worst case scenarios are not the only scenarios that you would actually experience. And I've seen this with pretty much every single client that I have spoken to over the last 10 years. They always want to give me the worst case scenarios. And it's almost harder to remember a slightly better version or a slightly better dynamic that might have happened less frequently. But what's really important is to acknowledge both, not just the worst case scenarios, but also the things that actually showing up in a positive way. Some of those ones that maybe turn out in a better way, because that is really a way for you to assess all parts of your sleep, not just focusing on the negative parts of your sleep. The sleep advice I have for this part is to really look at separating your daytime from your nighttime. A lot of the things that happen to us during the day are directly influencing our sleep. So if you're not able to fall asleep, what might be the reason? If you're waking up in the middle of the night, what might be the reason? But those reasons, more often than not, come from how your previous day would have unfolded or what you might have going on the next day. And again, I see this quite a lot depending on clients. Some people are more sort of past focused challenges, some people are actually experiencing more future based challenges. So when you really look at separating your daytime from your nighttime, first you're going to start looking at what happens before you go to bed, what happens in the middle of the night, and how you can actually create a better day the next day. And the reason I say that is because every single day is different, you have an opportunity to improve things the next day in order to positively influence your sleep, your insomnia, or your sleep problems. It's never that you don't have a choice or an opportunity to improve things. It's actually more about really looking at that separation. How can you separate the daytime from the nighttime so you can actually transition into sleep in a peaceful, physically, emotionally, mentally peaceful and relaxing way? And the same in the morning. Even if maybe you have not had a great quality sleep at night, how can you transition into the new day with more physical, emotional, and mental balance or relaxation or energy? The fourth sleep coaching advice I have is based on this idea, or the opposite of, that there is quick, easy, and sort of hack way of getting yourself into a better place. This is very much part of the culture that we live in, where everybody wants everything very quickly. But the reality of longer term sleep problems, and that can be as long as just 2 weeks of struggling, it's more complex than that. One thing isn't necessarily going to fix every single part of that sleep challenge that you are experiencing. And what I've seen with clients, the longer the sleep problems have been around, the more complex they become. But in a simple way, how I break this down, and you would have heard me talking about this if you watched any of my previous videos, is physical, emotional, and mental components. So the best things you can do for yourself is really looking at what is working for you when you have a bit more consistent results. So this isn't about looking at per one night and over analyzing every single thing. It's looking at patterns. That's what I do in my practice as a sleep coach. I look at patterns. We look at what shows up in a positive or a negative way. We build on the positives and we challenge or overcome or deal with the negatives. So those things are already there for you. Literally write down some of the things that consistently help you. It might be as simple as, when I maybe go for a massage or maybe when I do a bit of stretching, it feels like it's actually making a difference. Or emotionally, when you are feeling certain type of positive emotions, joy, enjoyment, that can be just as simple as just feeling good. That seems to relate to my nighttime in a different way. And mentality is, again, when, let's say, I have a less busy day, so I consume less during the day, it seems to relate to my sleep in this and this way. All of those things are already present in your life. So in my sleep coaching, I don't pull anything out of thin air. I'm really looking at the person and what is showing up for them. The challenge, obviously, a lot of the times is, like I said earlier, you can't look at yourself as a third party person. So it is often harder to find those connections. That's the role I play as a sleep coach. So we can really put the right things in place in order to see the results. But when I struggled with my insomnia, I overcame it by myself through these same things I'm sharing with you as I went through that process. So start making a note, but without overanalyzing them. So this is not about, okay, so if I did that, then it has created the amazing night or 50% better. Smaller things can often make biggest differences. So it's not about how big you find those things are, it's about how effective they become over a period of time. And then you build on the positives, you enhance them, you spend more time or maybe practicing them a bit more. The fifth sleep coaching advice I have is to look at the personality traits that you have. I talk about this all the time, especially more recent videos on YouTube, and I use this in my practice every single day. Who you are as a person with all your traits are going to have an influence on the way you sleep, whether that's a better night or a not so good night, whether that's a long-term sleep problem or insomnia challenge, or maybe a shorter-term one. Who you are is part of how you behave, how you think, what emotions play out. And we cannot ignore that. For one person, being upset can actually completely ruin their night, whereas for another person, not being able to solve a problem can do the same. So when you look at your personality traits, write down, and again, practically look at them and write them down, not intellectually thinking, oh, that's the one, but you've got to see how they play out. Write them down and actually really take one at a time. So for example, you write down 3 of your more positively influencing personality traits, and you write down 3 of your more negatively influencing personality traits. I work with 16 different personality traits in my practice, and they play out in different ways in behaviors. But what you want to start with is your own traits. But it's not about judging or criticizing yourself for having those traits. Every single personality trait has its purpose. None of them are bad or good. They are how we work with them. So they can be better if we work with them well, or they can be more detrimental and negative if we actually don't work with them very well. So once you wrote down 3 of the ones that actually positively influences your sleep or the sort of challenges you have, and 3 of them that are negatively influencing those, then now you've got things to work on. But just take one at a time. Using one personality trait and working with it for a couple of weeks at least is really going to help you to understand how it plays out anyway. There are going to be different situations. It's going to play out in physically, emotionally, and mentally, depending on the situation. But that's where you would start with, is actually make a note of them. Rather than keeping them in your head and you never remember what you're working on, this is really going to provide you with that opportunity to really actually work on what is influencing your sleep or your insomnia problems. The sixth sleep coaching advice I have for you is that it's completely possible to retrain your body and your mind to create better quality sleep and to overcome your long-term insomnia and sleep problems. What I mean by retraining is actually really working with who you are, and as I mentioned in the earlier ones as well, really putting together this practical way of looking at it. And the way I work with clients is we retrain the body and the mind to use things that are more positively influencing your sleep and repeat them so that you're in a better place to actually be preventing the things that are maybe causing a negative influence and enhancing the things that actually create a positive influence. Over the years working with clients, I have seen so many clients spending so much money and time and resources on very superficial things. Superficial things naturally often give you either mixed results or no results at all. But when you really look at retraining That's a very incredibly practical process that works with who you are, with all the challenges that you have, the way they show up for you in your life, and can actually have a structured program to overcome them. So please don't look for superficial things. If your sleep problems have been around for a long period of time, it will not be one or two things. It will be a combination of different things, behaviors, tools, techniques, changes in mindsets that will, in combination, create a better result. So putting a blanket over something with a superficial tip or advice is really just going to create more frustration, because most likely it's not really actually going to impact your sleep in a positive way. And obviously this sleep coaching advice is based on some of the previous things I already mentioned. So as an example, if you've got an overactive mind, distracting your overactive mind with listening to something actually as you're already in bed is not the solution. It's not compatible to what the problem is. Putting a blanket over and distracting your mind, most of the time what it results in is later on you're just going to have an overactive mind anyway, because as soon as you're no longer distracting your mind will go back to where it began. So the way I work with people is I really teach clients to decrease the intensity of, let's say, their overactive mind. So that's a very good practical example of what I mean by not using superficial things or putting a blanket over a challenge that you are having every single day or very frequently. The seventh sleep coaching advice I have for you is to really understand that falling asleep is absolutely not a switch. Falling asleep quickly is not always a good thing. But when you learn how to transition, and falling asleep is a transition, that means that you can repeat it every single time. So this is a physical, an emotional, and mental transition from the daytime to your nighttime, increasing relaxation to the point, and all three of those relaxations, in order to be able to really, what I would call, either surrender to sleep or simply transition into sleep. Whether or not you have a problem falling asleep or maybe falling back to sleep in the middle of the night, a lot of the times these two are very, very close to each other. And in these cases, quicker isn't better. If you have had a difficult day and it might take you, let's say, 10 or 15 minutes, then that's completely okay because it matches your daytime experience. But when you have had a more relaxing or easy day, of course, it's going to be a bit quicker. But seconds is not the goal. So when you embrace this idea that it is a transition, then what you can really look at is what are the things that help you create physical relaxation, and these will come from the daytime, emotional stability or emotional relaxation, this will most likely also come from the daytime, and mental relaxation or calmness or stability that also come from the daytime. Falling asleep doesn't just happen without all those things. It's a build-up of events. It's often actually about how you're able to work with all of those parts, the physical, the emotional, mental components, in order to achieve a higher amount of combined relaxation. But it starts with actually writing down what it means for you. And I have this with clients all the time, where we really start to figure out what does relaxation in these three different ways mean to them, because they are there, even if they maybe not as often as you might want to. And when you really understand what that is for you, you can more easily transfer that into this process of falling asleep easily. But what I mean here is not, oh, if I go for a half an hour run, then I feel relaxed. Because that means you need the run in order to create relaxation. Relaxation doesn't have to take a half an hour run to create. Or another example, if I listen to a podcast for 45 minutes, I feel relaxed. Again, falling asleep naturally does not have to mean that you have to put 30 or 45 minutes of effort in order to create it. It can actually be shortened and really optimize so that it doesn't take you to use any of those things externally, but it becomes naturally helping you every single day. The eighth sleep coaching advice I have for you is based on this idea that just because you wake up in the middle of the night, it does not mean, and categorically does not mean, you ruined your sleep completely. A lot of the clients who I work with who have nighttime disturbances or challenges falling back to sleep again, this idea of, well, it's completely ruined my sleep, comes into our conversation. I wake up sometimes as well, even though my sleep is very good. But the difference between how I respond to the waking compared to maybe a client who is still struggling is that I don't actually take it out of context. I can be calm, relaxed about it. Whereas if somebody has struggled with long-term sleep problems and insomnia, especially when it comes to nighttime disturbances, every time the person wakes up, and this might relate to you if that's your sleep struggles, you're going to have some sort of a here we go again, or maybe a version of frustration, a version of tension right there and then. That means that it's already triggered something else in you. Whereas for me, if I wake up in the middle of the night, then I'm just like, oh, okay, I've woken up, and there is no heightened response to it. Now, obviously, this often comes from, for clients, it comes from not being able to sort the problem out. But emotional responses are a very big part of your inability to then be able to fall asleep again. So what you can do, and this is categorically not doing it in bed at all, and only doing it, let's say, after half an hour of you getting out of bed and maybe even having breakfast. So this is not to be done any close proximity to the bed or in bed. This is really important. You want to reflect back to your night before when you might have woken up, and you want to make a note of what might have been the reason you actually initially woke you up. Not everybody knows those. And what might have prevented you from being able to fall asleep again, maybe easily or at all. So some clients manage to fall back to sleep again, but maybe it takes them an hour, or maybe you don't actually able to go back to sleep again. Everybody is different. So make a note of what you feel has helped you to either fall back to sleep eventually, or maybe in an easier way if the night is slightly better. Both of those can be incredibly useful, because when you know what has actually helped you to be able to do that, you can then work on that. But let's say you wrote down 4, 5, 6 different things. What's really important is you take one and you work with one at a time. This goes back to the earlier principle when I said, if you change too many things, you're not going to know what has worked. Okay? So nighttime disturbances show us something. There'll be some clues in what is the situation, and therefore it gives you ideas of how to really work through and get yourself to a better place. The ninth sleep coaching advice I have for you relates to your morning. And this is very much about waking up in the morning is not just about the moment you opened your eyes or when you actually got out of bed. Just like falling asleep, waking up naturally is a process. It's a physical, mental, and emotional process, all three of them together, which allows the body to come out and transition out of whatever sleep stage you were in before and actually really wake up. Now, depending on the sleep problems you have or the insomnia challenges you have, this might be one of those ones that's actually incredibly messy in a way, because depending on what your nighttime is, your waking up is obviously going to be impacted as well. One of the first things I would advise you to do within your waking up in the morning, and again, you don't do this in bed, and you do this sort of half an hour, maybe even 45 minutes after you get out of bed, is to look at how you can actually wake up more naturally. So I'm sure you would have seen lots of different videos on like the waking up process. I shared a bunch of different things on my YouTube channel about this as well over the years. Waking up naturally means that your body starts that transition before you even become conscious. That is made up a bunch of different things that starts that process. So really look at, what do you think is going to help you wake up more naturally, and take the examples from maybe a day when your waking up was slightly better, or it was easier, or it felt more natural. Again, depending on the situation you're in, sometimes this can be easier, sometimes this part can be a bit more hard. But you start with one sleep coaching advice at a time anyway. So take the ones that relate to you the most and work through them one at a time. Okay? But again, in the morning, creating a much better, more relaxing routine is going to help you to actually have a more natural waking. And the beauty of this is when you create a more relaxing morning, and this can be just more relaxing in a small way, it doesn't have to be perfectionalized. What you're telling your mind with that is, remember, we'll do this tomorrow as well. As soon as you start becoming more relaxed in the morning, it's actually going to have an impact on the other parts of your sleep as well, because your body and your mind starts to realize that not all of these things has to be really stressful for you. So that part of relaxation, where the more memories you create around it, the more your mind is going to be like, actually, I'm in a better place. So that links back to feeling more emotionally relaxed, more physically relaxed, and actually being more mentally relaxed as well over a period of time. And this is very much about creating a much better morning routine that creates that version of relaxation in a way at the beginning of your day, no matter what the night has brought you the night before. The 10th and last sleep coaching advice I have for you is to really look at your entire body as a whole within your 24 hours. A lot of the times when clients come to me and we start working on sleep, we really focus our attention on the sleep problems that show up in the middle of the night. But we cannot ignore how healthy your body is. And what I mean by that is physically healthy. So whether or not you've got any medical conditions, or how well do you look after your physical health, your emotional stability and emotional health. So again, how do your emotions support you to be a stable human being or not? If you are sleep deprived, naturally, when we have sleep deprivation and lack of quality sleep, it's going to impact both our physical and our emotional health. But also, we need to look at your mental stability. Now, a lot of the times people talk about mental health, but the way I approach it is more this idea of mental stability. When you have sleep problems and you have lack of energy, of course, it's going to start creating other things in your life. And some of those are more mental health challenges, feeling more more the negative emotions more often, which then creates negative thinking more often. So, but it doesn't always mean that we have to qualify it as a mental health problem, but just to look at in terms of mental stability. So when you look at yourself as a whole and you look at how healthy you are in all those three areas, it's really going to also add another layer to how you can support yourself in a better way so that your body can create better quality sleep. If you have got either physical, emotional, mental challenges, health challenges, of course it's going to impact your ability to sleep well. They're not separate from each other. Our body works together in all those ways to create our daytime and our nighttime. They're not separated just because we close our eyes and we fall asleep and sleep. Now, the way to look at these things is, again, a practical way to look at it. Figure out what are ways, smaller ways, rather than these very big things of like, I'm going to change my life completely so that I can have great quality sleep. That's not what I'm talking about here. But really figure out one or two things that you can improve on when it comes to your physical health. What can you tweak? What can you add or take out, which will actually start influencing your physical energy, for example? Then we look at emotions. Emotions, and the way we can improve emotions is actually to experience things. So when we experience nice things, then positive emotions will be something that we experience. So how can you plan 1 or 2 things that really bring you that version of relaxation, good feelings, enjoyment, maybe joy? We're not looking for happiness and forcing it. We're looking for different to the negative emotions you're actually experiencing when you're more sleep deprived. And it also doesn't have to mean that you have to have a weekend trip away somewhere. The smaller the things are, the easier they are to practice. And the more you practice the smaller things, the more they're going to actually contribute to your overall 24-hour period, hence sleep as well as your daytime. And then we look at ways to improve your mental stability. Again, this is not about ignoring what is happening. It's about starting to really create experiences which create more either neutral or positive thinking. But this is not forcing or ignoring what's happening. So again, creating mental stability is a practice. It can be something that's incredibly practical. Again, depending on your background, you've got to start with where you're at. But I would really look at as this last piece, this 10th piece, to look at your overall health. Sleep is actually needed in order to be healthy, but we actually have to look after ourselves during the day in a healthy way in order to create great quality sleep. And that's very much how I look at my sleep coaching work. I work with my own methodology, which is called the Sleep Deep Method. And in that, I look at 7 areas of life that impacts our sleep, and all those 7 areas of life will actually be impacted by sleep as well. So I hope that these 10 sleep coaching advice, which I collated for you to celebrate 10 years in business, will really help you to start putting together these puzzle pieces that will help you to improve your sleep and even overcome your insomnia. But as I mentioned, these all have to go together. Just because you pick one, it doesn't mean that it's going to sort out every single area of your sleep that you're struggling with. These 10 work in combination. And a lot of the times, these are the basic principles that I use in my practice as well. And these are also the things that helped me overcome my insomnia many years ago. So thank you so much for watching. And if you're interested in more of these kind of things, next week, I'm actually going to share with you the 10 things that helped me to actually keep my sleep in a good place once I overcame my insomnia many, many years ago now. Now, it will be a combination. So it's both what helped me and what kept me in a good place. And I'll break them down just like I did today, so we can actually go through them one at a time and give you more of that practical perspective on it. So if you're interested, make sure you come back and check that out as well. And if you haven't yet, then this is the time to hit that like button below, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet, and hit that little bell as well so I can let you know when I post new videos. Other than that, thank you again, and I will see you next time.